So I have the privilege today of introducing Miss Carrie Williams. She is Director of Student Disability Services here at East Texas A&M University. How long have you been here?
Going on 3 years.
Okay.
So not very long.
For those of you who, many of you are TAs, right? GT, graduate teaching assistants. Have you ever received like an accommodations email that you have a student who needs extended test time or anything of any of that nature? That is from her office. She oversees all of that at our university. And one of the reasons, there are two reasons that we've invited her here to speak with us. One of which is that I have a special topics course this semester, Neurodiversity of Linguistics, where we're really hitting on those issues of neurodiversity. So part of her presentation today is actually going to go in that course shell, but also it's relevant to those of you who are not in that class, because what we do in our lab meetings, right, is we're preparing you academically, we're preparing you to be experts in the discipline, we're preparing you for your future careers. And many of you may be teaching full-time, right? Whether as a professor, or I know we have many students who are going to stay in the K through 12 arena. And then many of you might be leading and managing jobs and teaching unofficially, right? And leading in different capacities. So as part of that, one of the things we can do is prepare you for the diverse learning landscape, right? So how to be an effective teacher. Part of that is knowing your discipline. Part of that is knowing how to teach. And so she's going to present to us today, neurodiversity. What did you type?
And accessible learning.
Neurodiversity and accessible learning. Thank you for coming.
I'm pleased to be here. Thank you so much for allowing me this space. I too am a doctoral student, so I am almost at my dissertation stage, but I'm for EDD higher ed, so that's where I'm at. A little bit about me. I was a K-12 special educator for 17 years, so I taught every grade except for 6th and 7th, and there's a reason, because it's middle school.
6, 7. You just said 6, 7.
I don't like sixth and 7th grade. Not my cup of tea. But I do have experience in all of the different areas of education, specifically special education, looking at students with disabilities. So transferred over here to higher education. It'll be 3 years in July. Love what I do, love the fact that I work with students with disabilities, and I even get to still kind of work with K-12 students for our students that are dual credit. So I did kind of put together a sort of a cheat sheet of what we're going to be talking about today and what my presentation is going to be over. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. Stop me and ask. I am happy to answer all of those questions. So really, when we talk about neurodiversity, learning and college success, I know as a K-12 educator, we focused on success of our students. We want our students to be successful when we are teaching them. In the college atmosphere, higher education, with students with disabilities, we focus on access. So I want to make sure as an educator, as a teacher, as an instructor, that I am providing access to my students that have disabilities, and also those that don't have disabilities as well, because we have all kinds of people that are neurodiverse, right? We talk about neurodiversity. We're talking about how naturally our brains are varied and how we process information. So when we talk neurodiversity, it doesn't just have to be autism. Doesn't just have to be talking about ADHD. We could also be talking about learning disabilities like dyslexia, working memory, our processing speed. So how our students, even us as students, are taking in information, loading that information, and then being able to be successful and have access in our college coursework. So when we talk about college success, it depends on not just the teaching design, not just individual skills of the student, but also the environment that the students are in. So think about, I can even tell you the difference between this classroom and classroom 301 that I originally went to. That one was darker. It didn't feel as welcoming. It didn't have posters on the walls. It didn't have bookshelves. So those things truly do make a difference when we talk about how we are teaching our students. And then, of course, the goal, as we talk today, is just understanding learning differences, current trends. I'll talk about current trends in linguistics, and then what supports have seemed to work in the past and what I'm seeing going forward. So I do have on the bottom of my PowerPoint where I've gotten some of this information. Again, as a EDD student, I'm doing research on my own. And so a lot of this plays into my research for my dissertation as well. So definitely having that down there. So we look at natural variation. We definitely know everybody here in this room and online, you're different people. We are not carbon copies. We are not cookie cutters. We are all different, and we are all have variety ways that we are different. And that could be in how our brain functions, right? It could be the fact that maybe some of us have anxiety. Maybe some of us have autism. Oh, I have autism twice. I liked it so much. Some of us might have ADHD. I'm happy to tell you that I myself have a chronic health condition. I have chronic migraines. That's a neurological disorder that will impact me if I have these lights on all day. So I make sure that I have little lamps on in my room, in my office. So that environment in and of itself helps me be successful in my work. And I've learned that over time. I'm also not a college age student, not a traditionally college age student. So I've gained this knowledge over time. Our environmental impact, when we talk about student success, we like to talk about inclusive environments, right? Making sure that we have thoughtful teaching design, and then UDL, universally designed learning. So we have all of these things that kind of encompass what it's like and what we need to kind of focus on when we're talking about people with learning differences, specifically people with neurodiversity. So when we look at how neurodiversity intersects with student learning, it profoundly shapes how our students engage with processes and information in every academic setting. So understanding the areas that are difficult sometimes for students is crucial for us as educators and future educators to be able to provide effective supports for students. We might see often someone with a neurodiverse brain have difficulties with attention and regulation. So that would be sustaining focus, filtering distractions, shifting from task to task, and pacing in academic work. I know that these sound very like, yeah. Truly, when we talk about having to shift from one task to the next, some of us, even some of us here, need additional time to kind of process what is going to happen next. How do I get there? What's my next step? So knowing that about ourselves and knowing that about our students, those quick shifts, although they have to happen sometimes, if there's a fire drill, you don't have a choice. You got to get up, you got to go. That's a quick shift. But a lot of times, we do ask that, we have these sort of preemptive measures in place. Our language processing. I am, having been a special education teacher, I know that my students learn verbally, they learn, they have auditory processing, and they can also learn through kinesthetic tactile, they learn through visuals. So kind of putting all of these things into place so that I can provide you a handout and I can talk to you and I can provide you a PowerPoint and you'll have a video to go with it. All these different ways that you can learn these things. We do have some students, especially students that are neurodivergent, that when we talk about language processing, the speed and accuracy in which we are reading, spelling, and writing, as well as the verbal information retrieval, can be significantly impacted. I know I myself, I learn a lot better when I have an audiobook. And I know that about myself. So all of my coursework, I've gotten audiobooks instead of the physical handheld book. That's just how my brain works, and I know that. Some students need that physical copy of that textbook and need to be able to highlight and write notes and do stickies and have different pens for different things. And that's okay because that's how they're learning and that's their process and that's how they're divergent. Spelling is always a huge thing, especially now with all of our, auto-generated and all of these wonderful techniques and tools that we have at our disposal. I love the fact that we have assistive technology. It definitely helps some of our students that are neurodiverse. What I've noticed is that we have students that oftentimes will need sort of to filter out some of the distractions. And in order to do that, sometimes they have to escape, meaning just step out, have a minute or two to recompose themselves and come back in. We also know that executive functioning can be impacted for our students or people that are neurodiverse. So when we talk about executive functioning, we're talking about difficulties with time management. Who of us has always gotten everything in on time? Not me. And I strive to be perfect, but that is not sometimes how it goes. When we have neurodiverse students and we have our neurodiverse ourselves, time management can often be a problem. We might be hyper focused on this one specific research topic or this one specific item that we're not able to get to the rest of our studies. Task initiation, again, is really tough sometimes for people to start. Just starting the task is tough. Picking up that pen, not knowing what my next step is. How do I do this? Having that plan in place. Working memory is just that memory that you have when you're reading something, you place it here and you're working with it. You're figuring it out to put it into your long-term memory. And so you're putting it short-term, then to long-term, and then you can process it out. So really, brain functioning is a huge part of neurodiversity when we talk about how the brain works. Organizing complex assignments can be really tough. We talk about, I've done chapter 2 of my dissertation. That's great. I did it in a class. How perfect is that, right? Like I could write my literature review in a course and I didn't have to worry about all of my chapters all at one time for my dissertation. So that's really nice when we talk about organizing complex assignments. So again, sensory processing. I know I talked a little bit about how my personal sensory processing, I am sensitive to environmental stimuli. So if you'll notice, I had sunglasses on my head when I came in. I always have sunglasses on my head. You'll rarely see me without them because the sun and the bright lights really bother me. So you will see me if I'm outside, I have my sunglasses on even when it is cloudy, which looks weird, but that's okay. Crowded spaces sometimes for some of our students. When we talk about crowded spaces, that could be classrooms, right? That could be going in the line to get to food because there's a line at Chick-fil-A. You might see unexpected movements for people that have sensory processing concerns. I definitely sometimes we'll see, was there a chat? Oh, thank you. Thank you. I just gonna keep on going. It doesn't bother me. Look, I can navigate through it. Thank you. Social communication. Again, we see a lot of impacts with people that are neurodiverse. Often will have difficulty. Oh, thank you. Communicating socially. So having rapid discussions, working in a group, implied social norms, participation grading. I can't tell you how many times I've had students come to me and say, I can't do group work. Like, well, unfortunately, we're going to have to figure out how to get you to be a participant in this course and what that might look like. It is tough, especially when we have students or people that transition from even post-COVID, right? We were at home, we were learning at home. We didn't have 40 other students in our class. I didn't necessarily have to get within 6 feet of another person to have a group conversation. So we are seeing really big impacts and we're seeing a lot higher occurrences of neurodiversity and those disabilities that are involved with that and being impacted with social communication. Social norms are clearly implied. Social norms, pleases and thank yous and opening the doors and doing these things that some people I don't think about that. That's not a social norm that I have. And that's, again, something that we'll have to navigate. All right. Uh-oh. Okay. So when we talk about barriers, I talk a lot with my students who come to me and ask for accommodation. They bring me paperwork and I say, okay, what barrier is your disability putting up for you? So a lot of times we will see students that are neurodiverse, they have the intellectual capabilities to do all of the coursework. It's just sometimes there are other things that are hindering them for being really successful. Way to pay attention. Oftentimes we know, those that have practiced being in social settings and are comfortable with it, that eye contact, especially in the United States, is key when you're talking about connecting with people, right? That's not always in every culture, in every country, exactly how, is communicated and how attention is communicated to others. Pacing for reading and writing. Wow, the expectation to have 4, 5, 6 chapters read in a week is a lot. But for a neurodiverse student, they need to be able to break those things out so that they have a plan. Timed performances. I give a lot of extended time to our students, whether they are neurodiverse or not. Even students with chronic health impairments, you might need additional time because you might blink and forget what you just read. We all have been there, right? We've all been so tired. It's 3 a.m. We got to get through this chapter so we can get the post done. And we can't remember what we just read. That's typical. That happens. But unfortunately, for people that are neurodiverse, it can happen more frequently than that. Unclear and hidden expectations. So, knowing what the unwritten rules is really tough for people that are neurodiverse. We have unwritten rules. An unwritten rule, I was walking up the stairs. An unwritten rule for us is you walk up the stairs on the right, down the stairs on the right. Right? You're not going to go on the opposite side of the stairwell because it feels uncomfortable because that's not how we've done it. That's not the social norm. That's not the expectation. So it's things like that. And I try to give really typical examples of what that would look like, of what a hidden norm is, or an expectation for just living life. We know when we're outside, if there's a group of people that are shoulder to shoulder walking, they're most likely, and they see you coming, they're most likely going to shift over so that you can come through, right? That's, again, social norm. Other people might not notice that. People that are neurodiverse might not have that expectation or know that. Inclusive design, so we talk about universal design, is definitely where we're starting to kind of plan for variability of the students that we're teaching. So things that I've kind of noticed, and especially when I've done some research, what helps the most is evidence-informed teaching moves. So explicit instructions, models, and grading criteria. When students go, I don't know how I'm going to be graded. That is concerning because I need them to know this is the expectation. I know when I get my syllabus, it is very 60% APA formatting, 40% content, or whatever it might be. It is very laid out for me, so I understand as a student what is expected. This rarely, it's rare that students don't understand how they're going to be graded. This is a lot of times happens in K-12 because it's more arbitrary. It's more effort-based kind of grading. Predictable structure is really important for people that are neurodiverse because they thrive on that predictability, thrive on that consistent agenda, that routine, checklists. I myself have my own checklists. All my Post-it notes have lines on them because I have to make sure that my stuff is in a line instead of all over the page, because that's how my brain works. And knowing that, though, is sometimes how we can teach students. Like, it seems like you're kind of all over the place. How can we get you to navigate here? How can we get you to be in one place? Oh, you need lines? Here, have a lined note card. Or have you tried different colored pens? So being able to just have these different, we think it's simple, but not everybody has these like truly in-depth understanding of how they process. Multiple engagement options. This is big. Being able to read something, have it in a visual format, have it in an audio format, having discussions, having reflections. So I think back to my undergraduate work, which was 25 years ago. And all of that was lecture based, right? We didn't have discussion posts. You read and you came to class and you heard lecture, and that was what it was. Now that's not how it is. I get my books through audio, so I have my audio books. I also am able to read. If I go to the library, I can read my books as well. I can get online, go to YouTube, go to Khan Academy. That's really helpful. And then have discussions and reflections. So kind of having all these different varieties of being able to engage. Low stakes practice and feedback loops are really impressive. And I think people that are neurodiverse, they appreciate the low stakes because the low stakes would be where we're just practicing. So I have some students that'll come in and say, I cannot do presentations because my social anxiety or this, that, and the other. And okay, come in and practice with just me. Like, you know me, come and practice with just me. And we'll do it 5 times. And then you can go to your class and see how it works. But as a case manager for my office, that's what my staff do. So they have students come in and we kind of tutor students and we help prepare them for real life, because we know at some point they're going to have to speak in front of a group of people that may be larger than 3, right? So we want to be able to prepare them, whether it's on Zoom, whether it's face to face. So those feedback loops, being able to have that feedback for the students so that they know what they are not doing well, or they know what the expectations are. Low pressure participation options. I find this very interesting because I did have an instructor once ask me if they could do anonymous participation and have that as a grade for the students. How do accommodations work for that? And I'm like, you know what? If it's anonymous, how do you even know who the student is that's submitting it? So it really was beneficial to some of my students who are neurodiverse that they were able to kind of anonymously put up questions or ask these things and be able to participate in a way that other students can come back and be like, well, that was a weird question to ask. Or well, I don't know why they said it that way, because they might not know how to say it in a way that is more socially acceptable. So what I've kind of noticed in current trends for listening in particular, there's increased reliance on recorded lectures and audio explanations. Definitely seeing that over time. I myself am reliant upon audiobooks. So when I can't find an audiobook, it really bums me out. But I'm also, at an age where I can kind of get over that if I have to. Some of our students don't have that practice to be able to say, oh my goodness, I don't have a recorded lecture. I cannot X, Y, and Z. Move back to number marker 3 minutes and 33 seconds, because that's where we're going to talk about, linguistics today, or that's where we're going to talk about punctuation, whatever it might be. Students sometimes need that very structured environment and very structured reliance on recorded lectures. On-demand review supports and pacing and comprehension. So when we talk about on-demand review, I have an app that we provide to students. It's a note-taking app. It's called Genio. It is not free, but it's free for students that are enrolled with my department. And what it does is it takes the lectures. So it would take what I'm saying right now and it would put it in 2 forms. It would record it auditorily, and then it would also put it into a transcript. So it'd be written. That it then takes the transcript and automatically puts it into like a quiz. So that's where we are seeing some of these comprehension pieces where students will sit through a 50-minute lecture and they'll be like, I have no idea what I just heard. Couldn't tell you what my notes are about for anything. That's where we can support students that have, neurodiverse and different ways of learning, that we can support them. So I'm definitely seeing more involvement with those for trends. Many students underuse supports. So I only have about 10% of our student population that is registered with, less than 10% that is registered with my department. In theory, I should have about 15 to 18% of our student population registered with me, because that is about the population in the country of people with disabilities. So I say that not because I want you to find people that have disabilities and send them my way, but I say that because there are students that don't know they have a disability, or don't want to admit they have a disability, or don't want to use the supports because they feel like it's cheating. I've had students say that to me before. It feels like I'm cheating when I'm using a note-taking app. I'm like, you're using assistive technology. You are not cheating and you have a disability. So no. So do know that I'm seeing that a lot with some of our students, and I've been trying my last 2.5 years to get more students and understand what a disability is and how to register for my supports. So another trend that we've been seeing in reading would be a shift towards digital and mobile reading. I have all of my textbooks on my phone. I listen to my textbooks as I'm driving home. I have an hour drive to and from work. So I get 2 hours of uninterrupted listening to my textbooks, which is so fun. When I'm doing advanced statistics, listening to that textbook online. But we do know that that is the shift. That is the trend. I mean, look at how many devices we have right here, right? It's rare that you're going to have that physical hard copy book. Increased surface processing and reduced sustained attention. I read a study about those people that watch those reels or the Instagram reels or the Facebook reels. Their short-term memory and their processing speed is significantly reducing every minute that they spend on those reels. Because those reels are so short, the then expectation is when you have a 15-second reel or you have a 15-second, the next thing you go to is also going to be 15 seconds. When my hour-long book is not 15 seconds, it's hard sometimes to focus. So we're seeing that a lot, especially with newer students, so students that are coming out of high school, definitely seeing sustained attention decreasing significantly. We're talking like by 70%. Huge decrease in sustained attention. We're also seeing declines in reading readiness, which unfortunately impacts college reading stamina. I have had students come to me and say, I have never read a novel before ever. And I'm like, wow, okay, okay. Mice and Men, nope. Romeo and Juliet, any of those things in high school, nope. Never had to read a book ever. That is typical, unfortunately, of what we're experiencing nowadays. I'm a huge advocate of reading, whether it's reading in your mother language, whether it's your parent reading to you in your home language, whether it's digital books, if it's graphic novels, that is reading. That is actually really high reading levels. Graphic novels are usually a 12th grade reading level, which doesn't seem like they would be, but they are very high reading level. So I love students to read graphic novels because high reading level. And it gets them understanding, processes of how we write. The more you read, the better you can write, typically. So that's what I see for reading. And then for writing, definitely seeing increased need for supports with organization and argument structure. So students needing that graphic organizer is what we would call, first you have your, introductory sentence, and then you have your 3 body sentences, and then you have a conclusion, and you have a transition. So labeling that out and having that for our students, I'm definitely seeing writing decreasing and abilities to write decreasing over time. Challenges integrating sources in sustaining long form writing. When is the last time you hand wrote a letter?
Just now.
Okay. How long was your letter?
It's just some numbers.
Oh, some numbers. Okay.
The Zoom meeting.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So, but that's unusual, right? Like typically I would take a picture, I would put it in my notepad. Being able to actually physically write is a whole nother.
I write in class.
You write in class?
Yeah, I don't like taking notes.
I love that. I love that. That's perfect. So that right there, that kinesthetic tactile process is implementing it in your brain. It's putting it in your brain a little bit easier and a little bit more impactful than typing it on a computer. We also see that generative AI has definitely reshaped, our revising process. Some of our students use Grammarly. They use, what's the other one? Quillbot. One of those. So they use all these different revision practices. And then instruction is definitely increasingly emphasizing process and transparency. So making sure that, when we're talking about a writing prompt, we're clear as to what the prompt is. Speaking and participation. and this is post-COVID, seeing a heightened anxiety around spontaneous speaking and, of course, graded discussions. I know I am not going to post anything in my discussion post forum that I wouldn't want to have published on the front page of the Dallas Morning News. I'm very cognizant of what I put in writing because being in the law area of law, I want to make sure that what I'm doing can be published and nothing ever comes back to me in a negative way. But students are just so anxious about having to do any kind of spontaneous speaking and participating in a group. As we know, participation improves with structured turn taking and prep time. So, something that I would see for universal design would be like, okay, tomorrow we're going to be talking about, this is our prompt. Be ready, Susie, to, be the first one to speak on this. And that way they have that kind of advance notice. Chats, back channels, recorded responses. I love the fact that in D2L you can do a video. So I have many times done a video chat of my discussion post, because for me, it's easier to just have a conversation than to sit there and type. But that's just how my brain works. Again, my instructors are like, you did the work, so not a problem. Inclusive participation does not mean that we're lowering standards for our students, right? So still maintaining the high standards. I have students in the doctoral program that are receiving accommodations. That's okay. They need them. Other helpful kind of observations. Too much interactivity can overload working memory. So if we're requiring extended periods of time, we're talking hours of activity between people, that can often overload our working memory, especially people that are neurodiverse. I know that structured note-taking, so I talked about my note-taking app, is extremely helpful for students and improves comprehension and their performance. And then, of course, strong support models that combine proactive design with accommodations. So kind of having those accommodations already in our coursework is helpful for students that may not know that they have a disability or may not have accommodations, and they can already kind of receive those accommodations. So just some super common classroom accommodations: extended testing time, reduced distractions, breaks, alternate formats. That would be like something that might be zoomed in, or it might be a hard copy made digital, or a digital copy made hard for students, depending upon their disability. Lectures, we've got reporting, advanced materials, assignments, reading accessible PDFs, captions, alternate formats, so having an audio version, assignments, flexible deadlines, which is rare for me to give, and stage projects. Communication, captioning, interpreters, and of course, alternatives to speaking spontaneously. So universal design for learning reduces barriers for the majority of our students. Oftentimes, it'll be like providing accommodations for everybody. Because again, when we talk about our students coming to us now from high school, we're seeing the lowered attention span, we're seeing the lowered reading levels, we're seeing these things where they might not have a diagnosis or an eligibility, but they could definitely use those supports to still be able to access the content. Post-COVID teaching has definitely expanded our universal design for learning, but again, some accommodations are still essential, especially if we have students that are deaf, hard of hearing, blind, low vision. So, using these supports without a stigma, I do have students practice self-advocacy, things like, can we post those materials in advance? Or can we talk about how this is structured? Because I'm having difficulty with X, Y, and Z. I often will coach students on what that looks like. Having that conversation, we do role play conversations. I'm the instructor, you're the student, tell me what it looks like. That's not something I would expect you as instructors to do necessarily, or TAs, but that's something that I do on my end. So do know that students are sometimes getting that sort of rehearsed practice and what it looks like to have those conversations. And then, of course, matching the supports with what we have with our students and what their needs are. I'm almost done, I promise. So just kind of thinking about, what are some course expectations that reward only one learning style? So one learning style might be, auditory only learners, students that might only learn auditorily. And a course expectation might be read 7 chapters, provide me with a oral feedback. That is not going to necessarily be supportive of all students' learning styles. That doesn't mean that we can't adjust it, right? And we have to teach students how to utilize their other learning styles as well. But if it's high stakes, sometimes we have to kind of make those practices. And then when we talk about where do students most often get stuck, and then talking about just thinking about, what design changes can reduce the need for individual accommodations. I can give you a perfect example. April of 2026, and the federal government has said you institutions of higher education will make every single thing that you have on the web, including your apps, your PDFs, your coursework, everything must be accessible to every student, whether you have a disability or not. That means it has to be, when I go to a PDF, I have to be able to click on it, and I have to have my screen reader be able to read it to me. Because if I have dyslexia, I'm neurodivergent. If I have dyslexia, I might need it read to me, but I have completely, above average intellectual understanding. I can comprehend it. I just need that additional support. So these accommodations are being put in place for everybody. And that includes like going to pay my trash. When I go to pay my trash on my website, on my app, that has to be accessible starting April of 2026. So you might see, and I know that instructors have probably seen where we are having lots of discussions. We're also having lots of trainings on how to make things accessible because it hasn't ever really been a huge consideration before. So do you guys have any questions for me?
Yeah, I have a question.
Absolutely.
Because I do receive reports from SDS.
Yes.
Yeah, but in those reports, they didn't specify which disabilities they have. So I don't know whether they have physical or mental depression, things like that. I have no clue about that. But my question is, sometimes some students I know I received the report from the office. So I know he has some disability requirement maybe. So I really am very flexible and I offer that, okay, if you cannot attend the quiz on this day, so which day do you propose to have? So we discussed a day, and on that exact day, he told me, oh, I do not feel well today. So it's difficult for me to set up a date with that student. So I don't know, to what extent should I be so inclusive?
That's a great question. And I think actually you and I have talked a little bit about that a year or so ago about to what extent is the accommodation altering the content of the course. I would encourage that student, if they are taking an in-person class, I would encourage them to schedule their assessments through my office. That way, we keep track of it. And we typically don't have a high no-show. So I think we have like 5% of our students no-show for our tests and quizzes. So when they schedule with us, it's also approved by the instructor. And then the instructor can say yes or no. I think if the student does not want to come to us, that's fine too. I think as long as you're doing your due diligence, so meaning you are providing 2 alternate days, you've done this twice, you can say this is the last time because we're moving on to the next content. We're moving on to the next content. This is the last time that you can take this, and that's okay. I would also put it in writing. I would have everything in writing if you can, because, and you can say things like, You were absent on this day. We rescheduled for this day. You were again absent on this day. The last day to take this is X, Y, and Z. Some instructors will say it's the first day of the last week of classes. I have some students that come in and take all of their tests, every unit for the entire semester in 1 week. That's rare, but that does happen. So it really just depends. I think maybe Dr. Tardo had something to say.
I'm sorry, not about this.
Oh, okay. No, not a problem. No, not a problem. Does that
Yeah.
help? Again, everything in writing. I am very email oriented, so I would definitely say, and you could copy us on it too. Yeah, and that way we are aware as well. Because we have conversations with students a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a
Thank
good
you.
question. Of course. Anything else?
Well, so thank you very much for the presentation, which I found
Of course.
extremely interesting and informative. So two things. One is, would you mind sharing the bibliography, your references? So the slides have some citations, but there's no list of sources.
I will. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so that would be super helpful. The other thing that I was curious is, are you aware of, or are you familiar with the literature on the fact that reading in a book, a physical book, leads to better retention and experience than reading on a tablet or on a screen?
Yes, I have definitely, that is something when I was doing my master's, something that I looked into, and I was doing some research on. Yes, I encourage students to have more than one format of a text. So oftentimes I'll have a student who's like, I only want audiobooks. Okay, but if we can get you a hard copy of that book, I recommend you follow along with the hard copy and the audio format. That way they get both of those. So it kind of marries the two. Yes, I have. And it's really unfortunate because we're seeing such a reduction in using physical books. It makes me really sad because even when we go to the library, there are hardly ever any books anymore. But I would love to pick your brain on that a little bit more and see how we can kind of assist our maybe K-12 educators on what that looks like.
Well, yeah, and that's a very, very good, it's a very complex issue. For example, I've moved away from lecturing because I found that if I lectured, the students stopped reading the book and they just listened to the lecture. And then they just looked at the slides of the PowerPoint that I prepared for the lecture, and then they failed horribly the test. So I stopped lecturing, I stopped giving slides, and all I do is I've completely flipped the classroom. So I say you read the book, and then you come to class and you ask me questions if you don't understand something. But I refuse to lecture because if I do lecture, they stop reading the book.
Yes. And especially with complex curriculum and complex subjects, the expectation is that students are reading the book and are comprehending those things. So, I joke about me having all of my courses in audiobooks and I listen to them on the way home and I listen to them on the way to work. But I then can come into work, and when I have my hour lunch break and do my homework, I'm able to pull up, right, like the digital copy or the hard copy of the text and be able to do my work through that. So it really kind of gives me that extra oomph. I would love to see the library be able to provide more textbooks in hard copy. I do know that students can request books in hard copy. If they don't have them, the library can buy them. So that's something good to know. Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I think Dr. I walked in late. I apologize. I had to run somewhere, but did he get to ask a question about accommodation inflation? Did he get to talk about?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, he said, I have to leave early when you ask about accommodation inflation. That was what the
Sure.
question was.
Okay, so accommodation inflation. I have Inside Higher Ed, Chronicles of Higher Education have definitely had recently articles on we are seeing more students that have accommodations. I absolutely agree. But I also have to say, we are not seeing nearly as many students with accommodations as we should. So I might see a student that has X, Y, and Z disability, and they have 15 accommodations. So we'll see that kind of inflation of the number of accommodations, but I'm not seeing the number of students with accommodations increasing, and it should be. I'm seeing students that have their disabilities are more impactful. So we have a process that we go through when we talk about accommodations. We don't just take a piece of paper and say, oh, you have this disability, you're going to get all of these accommodations. We look at their paperwork, and if they have a disability, wonderful, great. We look at that, and then we have a conversation with the student. A student, I just got an application this morning that said, I need all online classes for X, Y, and Z because I have this, that, and the other. Unfortunately, I can't do that. I can't change the nature of the course. I can't change the way that instruction is provided. I can't change the way that instructors are grading. That is not the point of having accommodations. I feel like talking with our system schools, I don't think we at ETAMU have a very large problem with inflation of accommodations. I do welcome every instructor to ask if there is a question about a specific accommodation, like possible absenteeism, those kind of higher level, we require significantly more documentation. And it also goes to a committee in order to approve. So it's not just me having a conversation with the student, it goes from the case manager to a committee, and then the committee makes the determination. The student can then request that we reconsider. I look at it then as the director, and I can say yes or no. It's rare that I will go against what the committee says because I trained them all. Like, we were all on the same page. So I hope that answers his question about accommodation inflation.